Representative Walter Hudson is my guest. No one has slept, of course, but good to see you. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm feeling good. It's a heck of a night. Even though a lot of us were predicting that this was going to be the outcome, I don't know that any of us thought it was going to happen so quickly or so cleanly at the federal level. Trump is the 47th president of the United States, and I'm here for it.
I think that, your perspective is so important on what the heck has gone on in Minnesota these last few hours, and wanted to get your take on that. But let's talk first more about that. President Trump, the number of voters in Minnesota who supported him this time around. What does that say about this state? What's your take?
Well, I've been saying for some time now, and I think the results affirm it, that fundamentally, culturally, Minnesota is not a blue state. Yes, the political results, the electoral results are still favoring the Democrats, but I credit that more to the kind of the institutional inertia of having been a blue state for so long. The fact that the Democrats have this apparatus, this political machine that enables them to keep moving forward, in spite of the fact that when you talk to people on the ground, which I do all the time, it's literally my job now, you find that people agree with us on the issues and they see things our way. We have already won hearts and minds without even really trying, actually. It turns out that people's natural instincts align more with conservative values than they do with the radical agenda that's been forwarded by the Democrats. The issue has been that a lot of those hearts and minds that we have won aren't engaging with the political process. They aren't voting. They don't feel like there's a home for them to participate in politically. And so moving forward over the course of these next 2 years, that's the job of the Republican Party, is to engage with folks, to build relationships, to build coalitions, and to compete with the Democrats. And it's not going to take any sort of matching level of effort, because the advantage that we have is, again, we are rowing with the current of the culture. We are rowing with the current of reality. The things that we believe in actually are true and righteous and good and practical, which are all wonderful things. And so it should be much easier for us politically to achieve electoral victories in the future if we put forward even a fraction of the effort that the DFL has been able to conjure over the years.
I think it's a good point about Trump as well, and what this has said just about the media landscape. You saw almost kind of a quiet, especially Minnesota media, I think, in those late hours last night. Of course, people seem to be getting in their corners already. That the fact that we're even still here having this conversation is really incredible, because the world was supposed to end. At least that's what we were told. But how have you seen that change? And it also seems that there seems to be a bit of hope that people just have tuned them out at this point, and they're not listening to this messaging with this, very decisive win for Trump.
Oh, yeah. The mainstream media. And listen, it's really tempting to spike the football on this point and to say, I told you so. But I have genuine and sincere concern about the media industry and the integrity of the media as an institution, because we need the media, right? We need to have independent analysis and factual reporting of things that are of public interest in order for voters to be informed. And as a society, in order to discern truth from fiction and right from wrong. And the fact that the mainstream media has lost so much trust, it's in the short term, it's been good for us politically, I guess, but it's not good for society, right? But yeah, what you see is people turning to alternative sources, especially social media, especially X, because it is a free speech platform, because you actually have the ability to evaluate different perspectives, bounce them off each other, and use discernment to find out what's true. And that's what people did. I mean, this narrative that half the country is garbage, that Republicans are Nazis and fascists and this, that, and the other thing, every name under the sun that we've been called. 71.5 million Americans voted for Donald Trump yesterday. 71.5 million. So the premise that all of those people are Nazi fascist garbage is absurd on its face. And yet I see so many folks on the left, including with the mainstream media, who are continuing to roll with that this morning and last night. that the real problem here is that Americans are uneducated. I mean, these are things that people are actually saying right now, both in the media and online. Americans are uneducated. Americans are stupid. Americans are fascists and racists and this, that, and the other thing. And that's a pretty hot take. I don't know how that's going to bode. I mean, I think that engaging with the American public in that way is exactly why they just lost as hard as they did. But just as a practical matter, I mean, you can tell instinctively that there's no way that's true, right? I think there's just no way that 71.5 million Americans are these horrible individuals who have nothing but disdain and malignant intent towards their fellow Americans. And so the left really, and the Democratic Party internally, really have to do some soul searching to decide whether or not they're going to continue along those lines of demeaning and disparaging their political opponents, or whether or not they're going to question whether or not their values and their agenda have drifted too far from the plumb line of our society.
So I have to ask you about Governor Tim Walz, who actually seemed to manage to flip some counties red, including his own home county of Mankato, Blue Earth County, supporting Trump last night. How do you see this all shaking out when he heads back to St. Paul, one would think very soon?
It's going to be very interesting to see if he has any insight about the loss whatsoever and whether it affects his conduct, his rhetoric, and how he proceeds. Unfortunately, I think the past indicates that he probably won't have a lot of grace in this moment. He probably won't have a lot of humility and come back with his tail properly tucked between his legs. I hope he does to some degree. I certainly hope that he recognizes that the years of lying, the years of misrepresenting both his details of his own personal history, but also the substance of what he's advocated for, that placing himself in the national spotlight, the reason why that was a drag on the ticket is because the harsh light of day brought to the surface the reality of both who he is and what he has done. And it turns out that people in Minnesota don't like it. And so the Democrats, even though I imagine they're probably going to try to salvage some sort of narrative of victory because they clung to the state remaining blue on the map for the time being, in order to have future success, they're going to have some internal reckoning regarding their approach to governance and their approach to dealing with the people of Minnesota. Because very clearly, after branding his campaign and his agenda as one Minnesota, the actual effect of his governance has been to divide us more than we've ever been divided before.
I know there's not a lot you can say at this point, as the Minnesota House is a tie. Republicans so far have picked up 3 of the 4 seats needed to win. Who knows how long this is all going to take now. Just overall, how would the House even negotiate such an arrangement in a tie? This has happened in history before. And how do you see this all playing out?
I think you're seeing and are about to see a lot of people racing to the history books to try to answer that question. And I don't have those answers at 10 o'clock the next morning after the election. It's going to be interesting to see how it all pans out. So the situation, as I understand it, is that currently with the current election results that are on the Secretary of State's website, we do indeed have a tie, 67 to 67 in the House. My understanding is there are going to be 2 recounts due to the margin of victory in at least 2 districts. The outcome of that will determine whether or not there is indeed a Republican majority in the House or whether or not we maintain this tie. If we maintain this tie, we're kind of in terra incognita. I mean, we're kind of in territory that it's not that it hasn't happened before. It has. It happened in 1979. But I don't know if there's any institutional memory of how that worked out. And I certainly don't know the context back in 1979 of, was it similar in the sense that you had the party balance in terms of like the state Senate and the governor's office be controlled by one party and then a tie in the House? Was it similar in the sense of coming out of a term where there was a trifecta that was managed in a very heavy-handed and manner where the majority steamrolled over the minority? Because this situation where you have to negotiate between the parties for control of a chamber, for power sharing, or however this is going to manifest, it requires some degree of goodwill. And the Democrats expended all of their goodwill with us last term. So I don't know where we go from here. It's going to be very fascinating to see how it all pans out.
Can I ask, have you reached out to your colleagues on the other side of the aisle at this point?
Again, not this early in the morning. I leave that to leadership to start extending those olive branches, and we'll see what happens in the next week or so.
Anything about just the wait for results last night? Waiting for hours, it seems Minnesota really stood out in that sense. Is it something you guys are planning to look more into? Does that worry you at all? I know election integrity issues don't seem to get the attention so many, I think, in Minnesota believe that they deserve.
Yeah, I have no doubt that there's going to be questions asked and perhaps investigations made of why certain things happened certain ways last night. Just looking at it on its face, the question that I would ask is, why is there such a discrepancy between these precincts and these counties' ability to simply count votes and report them? I mean, you have some, and this manifests nationally as well, like state to state. Florida, of course, reporting their results within a couple of hours, damn near, and many other states. Even now, there are states that are still counting votes the next morning, and it's just absurd to me. How do you not have the ability to do this in 2024 with all of the technology and manpower at our disposal? This should be a top priority for the sake of providing that sense of integrity, providing that sense of public trust in results. It should be a priority to produce a prompt and trustworthy result from an election. And so I think those questions are going to continue to be raised, and it'll be very interesting to see where those discussions land.
Finally, you did talk about this, Minnesota becoming home to new Republicans. Wanted to point out that I know your work has been so instrumental in that, in your new role. You helped to bring forward Somali leaders just days ago to publicly support Trump for president. Another story that it seemed the mainstream media ignored. But talk a little bit about that. It seems like you seem hopeful that this morning, Walter, that perhaps the tide is turning.
Oh, yeah. It's such a glimmer of hope. And it's actually, it's hopeful, but it's also kind of a sad story, because where this is coming from is people feeling disaffected, ignored, abandoned. And a lot of the times that manifests in people checking out and not participating in the process. So many of the conversations that I have with folks on the ground or on the street is them telling me that they don't vote, or that they vote reluctantly. There's a general apathy that defines the attitude in a lot of these minority communities, whether it's the Somali community or African Americans or East Africans or any given group that we are engaging with. They feel as though their vote doesn't matter and nobody's listening to them. So I think one of the responsibilities that we have, regardless of how the situation in the House pans out, as a Republican Party, we need to be talking to these folks right now, leading into the legislative session, ensuring that they have a sense of participation in what it is that we're doing, and a sense of stake in the future. Because providing that sense of hope, providing that sense of representation, ironically enough, is the path to earning future political coalitions that can lead to those electoral victories that I think are more aligned with where the culture of Minnesota is at.
Representative Walter Hudson, sure hope you get a nap in here soon, but thank you for being here.
Thank you. Appreciate it.